A Pyká library can be quick and painless to create. Let's start by clicking the plus sign on the splash window. Now let's click New Library. The first thing Pyká wants to know is what the refresh rate will be for this library. A refresh rate is the amount of time that passes before the managing computer takes in new changes to the library and passes them along to other users of the library. A Pyká library is updated and maintained by one computer. In other words, changes can be made by all users of the library, and then the managing user's computer processes those changes into the library. If this library is going to be used by many users, or if the library file will be accessed over a slow connection, you might want to increase the refresh rate time. On the other hand, if the library has a few users and it has a fast connection, a lower refresh time will do. Next, we need to decide the name of the library. This is the name that we identify the library by. Now we must choose the managing user. The managing user's computer is in charge of processing any changes to the library. The managing user should be someone whose computer is directly connected to all of the storage volumes that the library files are saved on. The managing user should also be someone whose copy of Pyká will be running if other users are using the library. For instance, if the library is going to be used during business hours, the managing user's copy of Pyká should be running and logged into the library. Type in the name of the managing user you've selected. Just a note, any user may use the library if the managing user is not logged in. But the changes made by that user will not be saved to the library until the managing user is logged into the Pyká library. Finally, we need to decide if we want to require users to commit before quitting. Pyká projects save changes as commits. All changes to every project get committed or copied to the library where they're stored permanently. Some library owners might want to make sure that every day's changes are committed no matter how minute. If this is their preference, Pyká has the option to commit on quit. If a library is set to commit on quit, then every time any one of your users quits, their copy of Pyká will commit any open projects it's tracking before it closes. But be warned, this setting has the potential to drastically increase the size of your Pyká projects and library files, and might make searching take longer. Only select Commit on Quit if you're sure you wish to have every user commit the changes to their projects at the end of every session, and make sure you have enough file space for your library files. When you're finished, click Next to move on. Next, let's add and edit our users. Start by selecting the managing user in your user list. Now you can either change the managing user's name or password. Note that the password fields will remain red until both passwords match. We can also add a mugshot to this user's profile. If this is the only person who will use this library, you can move on now by clicking Next. If not, let's add a new user by clicking Add New User. Then click the new user name so we can edit that user. Let's change their names and add a password if we want. Let's also alter their library permissions. And finally, let's drag in a mugshot. Repeat this as many times as you need for all of your users. When you're finished, click Next to move on. Finally, let's determine our storage settings. Pyká libraries are stored in Pyká library files. Pyká library files contain your assets, projects, user settings, and search data. The cool thing about Pyká library files is that they can be grouped and mirrored. A group of Pyká library files is called a storage group. When Pyká opens all of the library files in the storage group, it treats that group as one library. In this way, a storage group can allow your Pyká library to theoretically grow without limits. If a storage group ever runs out of space, all you have to do is add another empty storage drive, save another Pyká library file on that drive, and add that file to your storage group. But remember, Pyká needs every file in a group to load that group. This means your users must have access to all of the files in the group as well, or they will not be able to load your Pyká library. Let's save our first library file on our 4 terabyte drive. Click the Add Library File button, find the storage volume you want to save your library file on, name it, and save. Pyká created both the library file and the first storage group, also called the active group. If we wanted, we could stop here and click Finish. But since we have some other available disks, why not create a second storage group full of library files for redundancy? Let's name and save our second library file on our first 2 terabyte drive. As you can see, Pyká has created a second storage group automatically. If we wanted this file to be in our active group, all we'd have to do is click the storage group drop-down and select the storage group we want to move it to. Now let's save our third file on the second 2 terabyte drive. Since we want our storage groups to mirror each other, we might want to combine the storage groups using our 2 terabyte drives. That way, the total space in the resulting dormant storage group will match the total space in our active group. We can also select one of the dormant library files and make their group the active group instead. Whatever we decide to do, remember, Pyká can't open a library without all of the files in the active group. So, if we choose to make the storage group with multiple files our active group, we must have all of those files present every time we open that library. If, for whatever reason, we need to open our library but our active group can't be opened, for instance, if it's damaged or corrupt, or if the drive was saved or crashed, we can use our dormant group to either assume the responsibilities of our active group, or we can use our dormant group to replace our active group. But the dormant library files must be kept in sync with the active group. To keep our dormant group synced with our active group, the managing user must access them all in unison so that Pyká can sync the files. Finally, it is unwise and possibly dangerous to access Pyká library files using cloud syncing and storage devices such as BitTorrent, Google Drive, Dropbox, iCloud Drive, or SkyDrive. Pyká needs direct file system access to the drives storing your Pyká files, such as drives connected over USB, Thunderbolt, or some local area network types. Using cloud storage and syncing services to store Pyká library files can potentially lead to data loss or file damage. Now we're ready to log into our new library. Click your library on the welcome screen. Notice Pyká gives you the option to log out on quit. Now let's enter our username and password and click Log In.